Hello, hello, and welcome to the rap party for Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky. I've been kind of bracing about this one for a while, but I'm glad you're here. Good to see you, Dies and Dylan. Thank you so much. And anyone else who happens to join in live, you'll be able to, put in comments and you'll add your flavor to whatever I'm discussing at the moment, and also just kind of showcasing any questions you want me to answer. Just to let you know, it is live. It means it's going to be a little scrappy. I have to adapt and kind of, go as I go. So if you have any adjustments I should make, like audio or whatnot, let me know. Also, normally I have a showcase of pictures or highlight moments from visual novels. But for this, I just decided to recycle my footage with a bunch of the excellent music. So hope you don't mind for that. I also just wanted to kind of briefly give a shout out to JT, who said that they wish they could be here, but they can't. Thank you so much for the confirmation about the audio. That's awesome. And Thieves of Hearts, good to see you here as well. Thank you so much. Now, let's get started. I wanted to say that I'm going to kind of break down how I'm going to go through this. So, I'm planning to deconstruct this backwards. Backwards being, I'm going to start kind of where we end it with the secret underground tower and Colonel Richard. And we're going to walk backward along the journey and kind of end back in Roland. So it might be a little odd that way, but I honestly feel like it's the best way to do it as a kind of deconstruction of the entire journey. Again, of course, if you are tuning into this or coming to it afterwards when it's been posted and you're like, what's going on here? This is my finale for The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky. Played through the game, loved it. But if you're listening to this and you haven't played the game, please stop listening to this. You should go play the game and actually, enjoy it like you probably should. Yeah, because the game is fantastic, and I don't want to spoil anything for everybody. But we're gonna break it down, kind of go through everything. I do have to say though, before we go anywhere else, I don't know why, but my history on the YouTube has always been about comedic timing in the most bizarre ways. Sometimes I have insane coincidence that happens to play out. A couple were in Muv-Luv. In one of the highlight moments of Muv-Luv Alternative, it's an operation that takes place on December 25th. And somehow, despite the fact that I've been recording through 3 different games to get to the point back to back, like Muv-Luv, Extra, Unlimited, and an Alternative, there's no way I could have actually planned it. Somehow I ended up recording the kickoff of that major event in the game that starts on December 25th on the week of Christmas, that actual calendar year. It was amazing. You never can plan something like that. It just kind of happened. It was so serendipitous. And then on the other hand, we also do other things where as soon as I decide to do something, they make some kind of weird announcement that kind of doesn't invalidate, but kind of makes you go, maybe I should have waited. When I did my first playthrough of Knights of the Republic 1, the week I started, they announced the remake, which granted, we don't know if that's actually going to happen, but it was one of those things where it's gosh darn it. And then, of course, for here, I just finished Knights of Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, and they just had an official breakout from some developers saying that they recognize that Trails is the best starting point for their entire universe, and so they're planning a remaster. Exactly, Dies. So Falcom's planning a remaster of some kind, but again, that's one of those things where they're saying we think it's a good idea. I'm guessing that's not going to happen for a couple of years unless they plan to just kind of freeboot it, which again, it'd just be essentially what we play here on. This is my Steam copy, but it was refurbished. It's the original game, but tweaked to kind of fit modern tech. And so unless they do that, I'm guessing it's still a few years away. But we'll have to see. I'm still glad I'm playing the original, though. I'm a sucker for classic, and even if some people might look at the graphics and say they're crunchy, I think they're great. I think it's very charming, and it reminds me of it's funny because at this time, I don't know for any of you listening, but when this game came out, it wasn't I was too young to play it, but I was definitely unable to play it because I didn't have very access to video games. Too young to be able to buy a console or anything like that. Let's see. Yeah, and also that's true. Like everyone, like you're all kind of commenting on how, yeah, like they've said for a while they want to remake, whether or not they'll actually happen or how it'll happen. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Honrengi, thank you so much for coming by. Thank you. Good to hear from you. And then, yeah, I have to say, like Dylan, like you pointing out, like the original art, like tends to be greater than like the evolution. I think that's fair, because the problem that happens though is always like hindsight, and there's always that like bias where you watch and play this game and experience it in its original form, where I know the creators, if they had had access to modern technology, I bet you they would have wanted to utilize it. If it was a choice between what they ended up doing and what they could have done if they'd done it today, I'm sure they would have gone with modern, graphics. But at the same time, we have such a bond with these older graphics because it's what we had, what we grew up with, it's our first experience, and it can almost bog you down a bit when it comes to like see a reinterpretation, because either it tries so hard to be right and it just doesn't seem to work, or they take their own direction with the creative license and it just feels wrong. But we're not going to get into semantics too much on that. Still good to talk about though, because it is funny that it's happening. Granted, I still think if they even do a remake, I'm sure we'll be seeing like Trails in the Sky in the past window, so maybe it'll be worth coming back to. Anyway, going to the actual stuff, because I'm getting distracted already. That's why these things end up going so long. I don't plan for these to be long. I have notes. I try to be responsible, and it still takes forever, but that's okay. So, like I said, we're going to be working backward. We're going to be kind of running like against the clock, but I think for what I want to cover and how I'll talk about it, it makes a lot of sense. But do keep in mind, I will be primarily talking about characters when they were introduced and when they had like major story beats. So while all the characters are present at the end, I'm not going to be focusing on most of them because I'm going to have time to get to them later. And like I'll retroactively talk about them in full, but we're starting at the rear. So let's just jump into it. So the secret tower underground, I have to say, the zone was painful. It was great. It was beautiful, and it absolutely does a good job of being what it needed to be, which is just a final zone where you feel like you're up against the wall. There's nothing else you can do. You're just fighting for your life. It was great, and like it was right in tune with the rest of the game, where like it doesn't want to hold your hand and make the the discovery and exploration aspect was always a very important part of the game. So to kind of see it be in its like kind of ultimate form for the finale, it makes sense. But recording it, especially because you got for when you're making a video, especially you're kind of trying to balance like your energy level with the just amount of time you have to make and prepare. And for that, it was just it was very disproportionate, where there's a lot more recording happening and not much like stuff I would put in a video. And that's one of the things I struggle to see for like live streamers, people who live stream gameplay like on Twitch or something. I can't see how, like, it's one of the most impressive things to me that they can take the boring parts of the games and they can actually make it entertaining. I don't know if I could do that. I don't think I have the skill or talent to be able to pull that off. And so yeah, we're gonna be I'm glad I can edit things. Dylan, you're pointing out that some of the monsters in the last one are pretty rough. Yeah, it's not even like they're super hard. They really make them just tanky, especially those stupid donkey missiles. I don't know if I captured my frustration in the recording enough, just because like I would be doing those fights, and like every 5 minutes I would just be sitting here in silence staring at the screen trying to work out my strategy, and just every once in a while I'd be like, darn donkey missiles, just because they were just so annoying. And, like, it took too long for me to get the rhythm down for everything, but the fact that like it felt like every fight in that tower at the end of the game I had to put almost everything on the line just kind of goes to show, like, I'm glad you all were helpful enough to kind of recommend I stock up on good items, because I absolutely had to, I always, like, all games I play, I hoard like potions and all the items that you can use, the disposables, and like most games I end up just like getting to the end with a ton that I never ended up using. This game, not so much. I used pretty much everything, especially in the final fight. Oh my gosh, like the celestial balm, the stuff that like resurrects you at full health from KO, like you find like 6 or 7 of them. And then that final fight, I was starting to get nervous because I was like down to 3, and I was like, I didn't know if we had another like phase of boss to fight or something else. It was crazy. Let's see. Okay, you know what? That's funny because like you saying Agate is like the key to having faster fights. Harangi. I gotta admit, he was my least favorite character. I'll get into it when we talk about him, but like maybe I should have played with him more. But I think he was like the one character I never voluntarily used, which is sad because I'm sure he's great, but for some reason I don't know. He just rubbed me the wrong way. And when there's so many characters I love, even if I don't hate him like at all. I think he's a great character, and I think it was really cool to see some of his like the hints at his motivations and like the kind of shadows of his past. I also thought it was clever because the writing is so good, and I'll talk about that either. But like compared to the god tier characters that he has to stand next to, it's just like, how? How can you pick him over the others, especially willingly, when at the end you can just run around with anybody? So anyway, the tower makeup-wise, really cool, visually striking. The music was phenomenal. That was the best thing. Like, I think the music made up for the frustration that was in those fights, just because it was just a joy to experience and explore. But then we get to Colonel Richard. Now, Colonel Richard was quite a cool character. We talked about it several times in the actual episodes, and we've also talked about it since. Colonel Richard, I do think, is probably one of the more textbook examples of how you run a villain. Because, you know, like, it's one thing to try and impose this idea of, like, oh, yeah, bad guy be bad because he do evil. You know, I get that. You know, fight the demon lord, all that stuff. Like, sometimes it's nicer just to have a very evil emperor-style villain. But the stories that stick with you and the villains that stick with you, they're the ones whom you can kind of understand. In fact, partially you could almost agree with. Colonel Richard reminded me a lot of the first season of Legend of Korra. I wish I could think of off the top of my head his name, but there's the villain, the masked villain in the first season. He was one of my favorite villains of like TV because he was crazy, and he was like willing to go way too far to make his Ammon. That's it. Thank you. Ammon is such a good villain in The Legend of Korra because like you cannot justify his actions and like the how far he takes things, just like Colonel Richard. Like you can't just say, oh yeah, like this guy is clearly like kind of lost his marbles and he's like hurting people and like willing to like destroy people, like people's lives and like cities and everything to bring about what he believes is right. But Ammon, good example with him was the fact that he was standing up for something that like when push comes to shove, you had to admit he was right. He was right about the disparity between like benders and non-benders. And I feel like Colonel Richard had the same idea. I think that there are existential threats to the kingdom. Like the invasion of the Empire wasn't that long ago. Like everyone who's alive except for like children, they saw their entire kingdom nearly get destroyed. I get why he's stressed. And now that we see how he was being manipulated, it's pretty clear there's something going on. Like and with Lieutenant Lawrence, like, which is ironic that he's on screen right now, but like Lieutenant Lawrence, you know, being from the north and like the apostle, ooh, mysterious bad guy for the next part, being like seemingly from the Empire. I'm guessing that the Empire's planning on coming back. They're just trying to do things like more intelligently this time. And so you gotta admit, Richard was kind of right. He kind of knew I think he knew deep down that there was a potential for threat. And like he said, we got like what Liberl has is technology, and that's not gonna last. People are gonna figure it out. So yeah, he's gonna go back. And then yeah, like guys, you're pointing out too. Like in the end, Richard got exactly what he wanted essentially. He obviously didn't realize he was being so heavily manipulated and that the tower wasn't actually what he wanted, but he got Cassius back in the military. I'm sure he's pretty happy with that. And that's the idea. Is like even when we beat him, like I didn't want him to die. I was like when he was implying he was going to sacrifice himself to give us the time to escape, like I was genuinely sad. I was like, holy crap, like is he really going to go out like this? And then thankfully he didn't, but dang. And then yeah, of course Cassius coming in. I like how like even though Cassius was like, he was there at the beginning being the doting crazy father, like the kooky father, And then he came in the last second being like the hero, like last second, like Deus Ex Machina savior. We needed to like, because we were way way over our heads. Like we needed somebody to come in and help at the end. And like, to be fair, it wasn't like, oh, like he just came in and rescued us. We were doing pretty good. Like we managed to do really well. So like it didn't feel like he was like invalidating our efforts, but we also were fighting something that was like pretty out of our league at that point, which was cool. It's a hard balance to strike in that. So bravo to that for the writers. But yeah, but between those two things, like Cassius, like we had like 3 conversations with him total. And yet we got to know so much about him just based on the impressions he left on the people throughout Liberl. Like that was a cool way to get to know like the heroic character that Cassius is. And like despite the fact that we never got to really talk to him, we really felt like we got to know him. Kind of like with Estelle, which is the idea is that Estelle just saw him as like a kooky dad, which is kind of like how we introduced to him. But then as we travel the country, we realize, oh gosh, like he's a big deal, and he's made a lot of people's lives better, and he's done a lot of good. Not just like, oh, he's a bracer kind of good. It's like he's a genuine, bona fide, like international level hero. And being able to learn that with Estelle was kind of a cool way to explore the character that is meant to be like so impactful. Again, it's a great example of something I'm going to talk about a lot tonight, which is show not tell, where they could just tell us over and over that Cassius was amazing, but they never do directly. It's not like they say like, oh, Cassius was great. Like people would say that, but it would be in contextual sentences when they would be saying, when Estelle would ask a question. Which you're like, wait, really? That's what he was like? And then they would like talk about him, but in a way that felt organic to the conversation. Any other time, people would just mention him or give an example of like why he was so good. And sometimes they wouldn't even mention his name. They would just give a brief description, but we all knew who he was. And it's just such a cool way to like make a big, powerful character not overshadow our heroes, but exist in the same universe. And Dylan, yeah, Cassius is a great example for Estelle to measure herself against. I mean, I believe she can get to his level someday, but I also wouldn't be hurt or upset if she didn't. He's so existentially like on the top. Not everyone's going to be able to get there. It's just kind of how, life works. Like, but Estelle's Estelle. I'm sure she's going to be fantastic, and maybe someday she'll actually have to fight him, like maybe in a mock fight or something, and we'll get to see exactly like how like if she and he can like measure up to each other, which would be really, really cool. Let's see. And yeah, I guess the only other things I wanted to say was the fact that like the teardrop amount of information we actually got from the finale is crazy to me. I can't believe that after such a build-up, they literally kind of just say, "Oh yeah, all this we saw with the black orb and the ring and everything is like, yeah, you know what? This was like a fraction of what's actually going on." That was pretty crazy to just picture in my head. This idea that the black orb being taken to the tower, because it felt like, oh yeah, this black orb is gonna just shut everything down, right? Like I thought it was gonna like kill the kingdom essentially. No, it just shut off the tower for like a second. Apparently that's what they wanted, because it was like, but it set off all these other systems. And like, I like how it also directly referenced the towers that we visited through every single like corner of the kingdom. I am confident that we're going to be seeing that when we play second chapter. Like I imagine that that's going to be a big part of that. It's going to be like visiting all the towers and like and seeing like what's different about them now that they've woken up. So I'm really excited to see that, just because I thought that the towers were always really intriguing to me, and except for the stupid red tower. That fire tower sucked. I don't know why I struggled with it, but I got lost so much in it, and it hurt to have to go through. I was so glad to say goodbye to that one. Yeah, the idea, like these, you're exactly right. The revelation to all of the whole game, essentially, and everything we saw in it was just phase 1 of like a 12-step plan It's like, good grief, these guys. That's another good thing. It's like, so the introduction of the professor being this like masked apostle guy, like one of the 9 apostles apparently. So like, I'm guessing the 9 apostles are like the antithesis to, I wish I could think of it off the top of my head what Cassius's like calling is, like his like the S tier bracers, like the top tier bracers. I'm guessing the apostles are almost like a foil to them. They're like top tier secret like undercover agents, but like of similar skill level. Maybe not in fighting martially, like per se. Like I'm sure Cassius going up against the professor would dominate, but that you got to admit that professor's got his ducks in a row. He knows what he's doing, and he's certainly effective. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what the professor's gonna be up to. It was such a good twist for me. The professor, I loved him as a character. Like genuinely, I looked forward to meeting with him again. Like I thought it was kind of fun because he was such a he came off as such a nerd, and even with the little hints that were there, I kind of just dismissed them because I enjoyed him as a character. Weissman / Alba was always there. Yep. I just can't. I just think of him as the professor though. And I'm always like, oh, he's so cool. Yeah, exactly. Like I was always relating to him, which is like kind of sad, but I mean, kind of cool. I like him though because like but the thing is like you gotta also admit like I was relating to him, but I was relating to the facade. I wasn't relating to him as a person. I was relating to like what he projected, which in a way makes me seem more shallow actually, because it means that like the kind of individual like I was respecting was the kind of person that he used as a mask, you know, not even a real person. Yeah. Okay, you call me out. Yeah, might be me incarnate in the game, but still very cool. And I loved like, yeah, thieves, like you said, like what made him so intimidating was how sociopathic he came across. Exactly, the turnaround was incredible, and it wrote right inside with Joshua's turnaround too, which I'll probably talk a lot more about later when we focus on Josh. But like, the expressions and like the manners in which he talked in dialogue, which remember, like I was playing all the voices, you know, so like none of the voices are actually like in the game, but like in the text you could still see like that shift in the way he spoke, and it's so cool that people can capture that so well in dialogue in writing. I like to write as a personal pastime, and that's one of the things I struggle with is voice. I can write in voice for characters, but shifting voice for characters, like having them pick up an accent temporarily or having a sharp change in their tone, can be really difficult for me to pull off in a way that I find believable. It's something I want to practice and work on, but it's tough because like it's hard to really get good insight on how to do that. I feel like that's starting to approach the level of like type of writing that you see from professionals, and unless I go to like take classes or something, I'm not sure if I'll be able to like really learn how to do that without just trying really hard. So yeah. Oh, interesting, a Kiseki thing, like people who are not looking directly at you. That's an interesting idea. I'll have to remember that. I'll try and remember that. Because I'll have to double check and make sure I'm kind of following on that, because I don't want to focus on that, but that's an interesting idea. It's interesting to see that there's like influence there, and it's probably going to come up in the future. Yeah. No, I'm excited to see more about Alba and see like where the professor takes things and like what, like I want to learn what his goals are. But the fact that like phase 1 was this game, even if we see a lot more like advancement in whatever this plan is in second chapter, I have this gut feeling that part of the reason why this series and like the chain of series, like this universe of series, because like there's trails and then there's like Cold Seal and all that. Apparently it's all the same world if I remember what you've said correctly, and how it makes me think that some of his machinations might be stretching across multiple arcs rather than just the Skies like series, which is crazy, which is really interesting to me. Yeah, like it feels like the world building for this, it maybe not be Tolkien level, but it feels pretty up there with Tolkien level of like world building and world crafting. Maybe more like a Brandon Sanderson level of world building. It's up there though. It's amazing, this world. Anyway, so I kind of want to pull back a little bit. We're going to go to Grancel. Grancel as a city was really fun to be able to experience and explore. The build up to Grancel was really fascinating. As we'll talk about with all the other cities, it's interesting how like I feel like whoever was creating this game, like Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, I feel like they wanted to really, they kind of built all around a philosophy if you paid attention for the whole story. And that is that ramping is important. Because if you think about the whole arc, we start off as like starting out bracers in a small town, kind of more rural feeling town. And then we slowly go to a slightly bigger city with a little bit more like intrigue. Because in Roland it's pretty straightforward, like monsters bad, kill monsters. And then we go and it gets more complicated and gets more like intriguey and more mysterious. And it finally builds up till we hit Grancel. And the cities have become bigger and bigger and more complex until Grancel City is like so big compared to everything else. And at that point we're mired in just intrigue and like everything's going out of control. We don't know what's going on. Everything we do doesn't feel like it's like we're not sure if we're doing any good. So the frantic feeling by the time we got to Grancel was fantastic. And yeah, I also didn't feel overwhelmed. If we'd started in Grancel, I feel like Grancel would have been way overwhelming. Like, can you imagine like starting the game out like not in Roland but in Grancel? Like, it would have been so much of a turnoff. I think a lot of people would have just like balked and run away. But the build up to it really made it work. Especially like a good example of that is that like you get introduced to like the first like sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. You get to like Bose and you get like and Ruan, and you understand things like, oh, this is what a shop looks like, and this is where the orb centers are, and then you get to, oh, this is where like a bunch of shops are together, like a little mall, and then like by the time you get to Grancel, it's like, oh, okay, like I can look at my map and I instantly know where everything is and how to read my map, and like it's not confusing. I know exactly where, if I want to go somewhere to get something, I can get it. That's a really cool trait, and I feel like that the whole game did that, where every time I had to introduce a concept, whether it be a narrative one or a gameplay one or a world building one, it was slow ramping. It kind of, every time you learn something, it was preparing you to learn the next thing. And Grancel is kind of like the crown jewel of that, of being able to have a city that's so complicated and has so much going on, like in every way, and yet to make it feel not overwhelming and to make it so that it didn't take long for me to learn like how to get around, was really, really well done. I thought it was fun to have the stealth mission in Grancel. It was the most complicated stealth section. I thought it was like the best done as well. It was just really kind of a fun way to kind of move stuff around. I like that the church, which in a lot of games like this tend to either be like passive nobodies or they tend to be corrupt. I like how in this one, at least, if it was the opposite, where the church was fairly passive and focused on like healing and helping people, and then at the end and Grancel, they actually were instrumental in helping us reconnect with the Royal Guard. I thought that was really cool, because it's not, I feel like it's almost like not a popular choice, because people like to, maybe writers like to be edgy or something, but it feels like almost every book I read or every story I read, the church is corrupt somehow and controlling everything. And maybe that's, because we like to imagine that governments and churches and real life tend to manipulate and control people. But it's also nice to see that like you can have an institution that's supposed to be dedicated to the well-being of people that is genuinely dedicated to the well-being of people. So yeah, exactly like Thieves. The church not being the villains was the real plot twist. In almost every other game, it would be the twist that the church is somehow involved in being bad. And that's the thing, is like, I bet you that they're not always entirely good. I'm sure they're complicated. Like Dies, say like it's one of those churches that does stuff. Yeah, like there's gonna be probably bad apples there. But it's just nice that like we don't always have that. Like it's become such an easy twist to predict. It's actually refreshing when I was wrong on that front. I also really liked the culmination of the plot with the reporters. I liked how Niall was really instrumental through the whole series, and especially being able to like kind of see how his coverage of the story and events became the kind of like the crown for like the events in Grancel when we were at the Dun. Like, cause like Estelle and Joshua couldn't be like identified as the quote heroes of everything because it wouldn't be good for them, their egos, or their like future prospects as bracers. And so like I like how they were respective of that, but Niall kind of like got to have his time in the shine in the sun and got to have that payoff that he was working so hard for. So it was fun to as a side character. He was one of my favorites, and he was kind of fun to voice too, I had to admit. Like all I really had to do was kind of like talk out the side of my mouth, trying to imagine I had like a cigarette in my mouth, and it kind of gave him a flair that I actually really liked, and so I just kind of kept going with it. Anyway, Dylan, what FC kept talking about the church, I was worried, but it turned out that it was just the church is actually really important to the people of the world. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing too. Like, a lot of times religion doesn't feel like it's important. It's actually one of the struggles I have noticed about myself. I run D&D and Pathfinder type games for my like high school friends. Like, that's kind of like one of the main ways we stay connected is we do like virtual tabletop RPG tabletop RPGs. Like we were doing D&D, but we're phasing over to Pathfinder now. And one of the things is that I've done a lot of world building for that and a lot of writing, and yet religion always ends up taking a back seat, despite the fact that like you have clerics running around who are literally wielding the power of gods. It ended up just kind of being a thing, and I decided that in the next time when I'm running my games, I'm gonna make sure that that the religion that's there and like is part of the daily lives of characters, it should have a presence. And so yeah, I'm gonna see what's gonna happen with all of that. Oh yeah, is there actually gonna be a tabletop RPG coming out, or is that just or is that just a RPG as like a different style of game? Because I mean, technically, this is kind of an RPG. Again, RPG is such a vague term nowadays. It's RPG in the sense that like you get to dictate like what your characters wear and like what magic they cast. But it's not like I was able to make like role-playing choices for the characters, which is fine. But like sometimes people get pedantic. Okay, tabletop RPG. I'll have to look at it. I'll have to see. Again, it's one of those things where there's so many tabletop RPGs, and especially now coming out. Like, unless it has a standout feature, I could always just take something like Pathfinder and port it into the world like this. But I would love to see how they do augment energy in a tabletop form. I am curious to see how that plays out. I think you could do some really fun stuff with that. Anyway, so the other part about Grancel I want to talk about is Zin. Zin is a great character. Not only was he one of my favorite characters just to have fighting, but he also is just such a big teddy bear. I love him. I feel like he is... he's just great. I like how down to earth he is. I really want to meet him, and I want to get to know more about his the kingdom he comes from. It's obviously very Asian inspired, so I don't know if it's going to be supposed to be since this game, you know, is from developers and writers in Japan. I don't know if it's meant to be a surrogate Japan, which is very common in Japanese games, or if it's more going to be based on like mainland China type of stuff, which is fairly popular, of course. But it is interesting to see, you know, where like his nation's influence comes from in particular. And I also just want to know him more. Like, he's a great guy. I like how he's so good at playing up like the dumb idiot, like the big tanky dumb idiot me, like me fight ooga ooga. But then he's actually very clever, and he just plays that role so well. This idea that he is so like observant, and he understands how people work, and he's willing to like work with that, but in a way that's subtle. He doesn't like taking the spotlight, like, except fighting. He does like fighting, but like other than like fighting in something like the arena, he's not the kind of guy who wants to stand out of a crowd more than just his size allows him to. He doesn't seem someone who pursues glory. He seems like he genuinely just wants to be a bracer to help people, and he wants to see others succeed, which is a rare trait to see in somebody who's so driven. And I feel like they captured who he was so well. And Dylan, you're also like Zin the Immovable, such a good nickname for him too. He's like, he feels like he could be a member of the Avengers or something, couldn't he? Like, he feels like he's genuinely just like a hero. Really, really good guy. So yeah, having Zin a part of the team, I love how he's got such a powerful taunt. Like again, him pulling heat in fights was often one of the things that made or broke a fight for me, and so I was very happy to have him on the team. I feel like he did a great job from beginning to end, and I was very happy with that. And I really enjoyed the tournament in Grancel. I liked the fights that we did there because they were so different, and they allowed us to kind of play and fight in different ways. I really was surprised that I didn't get to fight the Sky Pirates. I do like how they're definitely apparently going to be coming back. I'm curious to see how that all plays out. Especially, what's her name? The sister of the bandits, and how she, like, it was a running joke. Like someone told me way at the beginning that kind of a running joke is that everyone thinks Joshua is really attractive, and I mean, granted, he is. Josette, thank you, Josette. But the fact that of all the people who had a thing for Josh, I feel like Josette had the biggest. Like, she repeatedly was very like, oh my gosh, like he's adorable, and like I really want to see if that plays out to anything in the future. I mean, obviously not really, because we know who Josh should absolutely be with in the end, assuming he doesn't do anything super stupid in the next game. But barring that, we know who he should be with. But I want to see if Josette comes back and becomes an actual potential like love triangle-esque type thing. Maybe not even in reality, but maybe I could see, if I were to make a prediction about Josette, my prediction would be potentially that she comes back in the next game, because I know that the next game is going to be Estelle and likely looking for Joshua. And what if they end up becoming a team, but then like Josette and her like bicker and fight as like in a pseudo love triangle over Joshua, even if he's not there. They're like both secretly wanting to race to him. Weirdly enough, Josette works just as well as Joshua. Josette, the ship name. Yeah. Joshua beats Hans from the Academy. If Hans wishes. Hans certainly had his eyes on Josh. That was for sure. I loved that though. That was such a fun little shout out. And we'll get to the Academy soon. We'll get to the Academy. I'm gonna focus on the Academy when we get to that point. But anyway, so Grancel and Zin, fantastic. I loved every bit of it. And while Zin definitely came in place early, like we really got to see Zin as a character in Grancel. So I tied him to the Grancel City site. Now we're gonna go back to really complicated, going to Zeiss. So Zeiss is really interesting as far as the city, where, you know, everything else felt very, like, pseudo, like, everything else in Liberl feels very pseudo fantasy type city, where it's like, yeah, they got some, like kind of electricity type functionalities, but it's all, like, magic based. But it still feels very, like, fantasy. Like there's castles and there's like little quaint towns and walls and monsters, and then Zeiss literally feels like a modern city, like with an escalator. Exactly. Like it's crazy, and it's like, so it feels so out of place, but it gets so perfect for like the capital of like technology in this world. And so again, aesthetically, it was really fun. I didn't like the Zeiss like mechanical tower so much. It was super big and not very clear about where things were. It wasn't like terrible, but I definitely got like turned around in it a lot. And so that was a little like frustrating. And by the time I kind of figured out where we were going, I wasn't too sure. But the best part of the Zeiss tower was the book that taught us about how to talk to cats. That was one of the funniest things in the entire game to me. I loved that that book was there. I took pictures of it on my phone so I could try and interpret the cat's meows. I was so sad that I didn't have it on hand for whatever reason during that final confrontation with the cat. But like the fact that like when you go back and look at it, I even like looked at some of the older footage where we were talking to cats before, and yeah, like they were talking the entire game. And like if you had that guide for the whole game, you could literally have miniature conversations with every cat you see. Oh, and the tomatoes, can't forget the tomatoes that tasted awful, but apparently like They're so critical. They definitely gave you that food that gives you like your magic and like your stat boosts that like are just so. Yeah, so it's just like the whole city's Zeiss is just so interesting. It's such a big enigma. But like other than that, like the city was really fun. The professor was fantastic. Like the genius professor guy who, not the professor, like the inventor, whatever his name is. Yeah, he was so like goofy. I loved him as a character. I think, yeah, no, it was Professor Russell, right? Yeah, Professor Russell. Professor Russell, it was such a good like quirky character. You like hammed it up a lot, but at the same time, like we all love like the crazy grandpa inventor guy. Like that's a trope I'm happy to see over and over again. I hope I can be that interesting and fun when I'm 80, 90 years old. Like I want to be kooky and just off the wall bananas at times. Like I feel like it's one of those things, like one of the only perks of getting really old is that it kind of gives you the liberty to just do wacky stuff and no one's gonna really question you about it. Yeah, so Russell was a good guy. I'm very happy that we met him. And then, of course, we can't not talk about Tita. Like someone mentioned before, the danger lolly. I think that's a little, gotta be careful with that terminology though, because nowadays people tend to misconstrue it, especially because she's clearly like she's a kid. Like she's not meant to be like a romanceable, dateable character. I have a feeling she's going to be growing up and becoming a character that's a lot more prominent in future books, and maybe then people are going to be a lot more like, okay, you know, but like for here, she's just a little sister character. She's great. I do love the idea that the smallest character, the youngest character, runs around with a giant cannon. I do think it's really fun. And isn't it like her cannon, like the top tier one that I found was Mjolnir, you know, like Thor's hammer essentially, which is just such a great flavor win for sure. Tita is a fantastic, and I think Tita narratively is super important. Like she's great as a character. It's really fun to see such a genius and like a prodigy, and like she's clearly going to be one of the foundations of orbital technology and development in the future. It's very cool to see that she learned from her grandpa, but she's also got so many layers to herself as a character. Her interest, her bravery, her willingness to charge into danger to try and save her friends and family, even if she was foolish in some of those attempts. She's still like of course she's foolish. She's a child. She's so cool and such a I cannot wait to see what they do with her in the future. I get that feeling she's going to become a premier character, and I really am excited to see that. Like Dylan, like you said, you like how she's shown as both capable but also just enjoys the field she's in. Yeah, and she's also she's a kid. Like she gets to be a kid, and I love that she gets to have that space, even if Tita is just like. She's so combat oriented and so combat scary, but at the same time she's still a child, and I love that we got to see that in her. We got to see her loneliness, and we got to see how she immediately embraces the idea of having Estelle and Joshua as a brother and sister. That it's clearly she spent so much time working with machines, she almost she realizes that she's kind of forgotten to be a kid. And so, to be able to see that expressed, but with showing, not telling. She never says I never got to be a little kid. She doesn't sit there and mope. You just see how much she appreciates when Estelle calls her you're like a little sister to me. She it rocks her world. She's like, oh my gosh, you feel that way, and she's like, yeah, I want that in my life. That's just a cool realization to watch her go through. And so it was a joy to see and a joy to be able to participate, even if she it was also, you gotta admit, having, I keep rambling away, but the game's beach episode, quote unquote, which was the onsen, being able to have that. It would have been kind of a goofy, awkward if it was just Joshua and Estelle. Having Tita there to really kind of add a level of wholesomeness to it was really great, to cutting into the weird tension that we were starting to see with Estelle and Joshua, where it was starting to become clear that Estelle's feelings for Josh were a lot more than they were when they were growing up. And so having Tita there, I think, was really good. because it allowed Estelle to have her breathing room, like establishing her feelings, but also giving her the breathing room to be able to kind of step back and be like in the moment, which is just really important. I did have issues with that, like the book finding quest, but like it was a payoff in the end. We got that Grail locket thing that became pretty important. Being able to slap down on a character and make sure that they couldn't be incapacitated, very, very, very handy. And then, yeah, I guess as far as Zeiss goes, I did like how that really was the turn in the story. For, like, there was weird stuff going on, but then that was the whole, like, the Professor Russell being kidnapped, and, like, the false flag of the Royal Guard being used, just how stinky that was. And, like, it was like, oh, there's some serious stuff going down. Like, that was when the existential dread set in for me in the game, and I loved that. That was a cool turn to be like, oh, no, this is serious. This is bad. I guess as far as other than that, I liked how in Zeiss we really got a lot of the information about how orbital technology came into being. Because up until that point, like orbital technology, it was mostly a discovery of like how it works and what it's capable of. You know, the daily like lanterns and the monster evading like kind of like signpostings, the bridges, and then of course there's like combat magic, which is crazy. Got all that, like we learned all about that leading up to Zeiss, but then in Zeiss we really got the actual history, which again I think was great. It was show not tell. We were shown how orbital technology worked in daily lives and also in bracer lives in combat. And then the exposition dump, you could say, was optional if you cared to dig for it in Zeiss, where they talked about the history of like how the orbital technology development was really ultimately recent. Like how orbals had kind of been used for a while, but then the idea of the technological explosion from them is kind of like was like predicated by Russell, which is really crazy to imagine how like they went from like pretty much feudal like medieval times to what we see in the game in like a lifetime. And like they went from like carts and buggies to airships in that time. Like that's an insane jump in technological capability, which is really kind of cool. And they get that exposition of like how that happened and why. It also explains a lot about how they are using this technology and yet they don't even understand it truly, like not really, or what it's capable of. So the idea of like there still being so many mysteries to expand, like the artifacts, the black orbment, like there's clearly so much room to grow as far as like what this technology can even ultimately accomplish and how far it can take people and take like society is really cool. And I think they did a great job of like tying it all up with a bow in Zeiss, which is exactly where it should be. But it's just so well done. Thieves, you're kind of talking on that, talking about the idea optional if you care to dig for it. Yeah. Like it describes a lot in the series. It describes a lot in the game too. Like think about how many like quests you can miss if you just don't pay attention, or how many quests you literally have to find. Like you have to talk to the right person, or you have to remember something someone said and then like kind of connect some dots, or just go and visit a place that it doesn't tell you have to, like the lighthouse. Like the lighthouse was a great organic find. I thought was really cool, which we'll talk about in detail when we get to get there. But like that's a good example, which I'll talk about later. The other good example is actually in the next area I want to talk to, which is the Royal Academy. Like, well, I guess Ruan or the Royal Academy. I guess like it depends on which side you go on first or second. They can kind of interchange. Let's talk about the Royal Academy. So the Royal Academy, the whole like helping them set up for the festival, that was all optional. And the fact that like you had to like hunt it down, like there was no quest markers, there was no indications, there wasn't even like a hint in the journal. It just said like look for stuff that can help, look for things that are out of place. So, like it invited you to run around the entire campus and really take a good look at everything, which again, it's a great way to do some story crafting, because you don't have to look at it, but if you take the time, you can learn a lot about the academy, like its history, what it stands for, the types of classes they have. You even could attend a couple classes. That was really fun. This idea of like Estelle and Joshua like being like kind of like adopted students for a week is really fun. I think I mentioned it way back when I did that, but I kind of did that on my own one time where I had friends that like I had cousins I would go visit like all the time growing up. They were like my same age, and my aunt and my mom were very close, so we would visit them and get to know them really, really well. And part of that ended up happening is I ended up going down there when I was on a school break, but they were still at school. And so I think the Monday, like they were going to school, I was just like, I don't want to just sit in the house by myself. So I just, I can't believe they actually let me get away with this too. I just grabbed a backpack, jumped on their bus with them, went to their school, and I walked in and walked to the office and just said, hey, my cousins are here. I got some friends that go here. I don't want to be distracting, but I kind of wanted to check out the school. Like I wanted to just kind of spend time here with them and kind of like see what their school was like compared to mine. And the principal gave me a pass and just said like, yeah, you know what, just don't cause any trouble, but yeah, you can spend some time here. Like, and so I went to like random classes with my friends at this high school that wasn't mine. And it was fun. Like it was kind of cool to be able to be in that different environment. And so I got really familiar vibes when we were able to spend a week at the academy, where it's just like Josh and Estelle, like this isn't their world, but they kind of got to be a part of it for a bit. And they were just brought in rather than just like passively walking through and helping out with like a job, which is just a fun aesthetic. And then like, of course, we have to talk about Chloe. Like, Chloe is fantastic. Like, obviously, yes, she's the Princess Claudia. Yes, I should have seen that coming. I know I was kicking myself hard after that recording. And I was even, like, worried. I was like, are people going to believe that I actually didn't know? Because in hindsight, it felt really obvious. But I just went over my head. It's like, I was like, they're going to think I was hamming it up. That was like doing some kind of fake reaction. Like, you gotta understand with me, I don't ham things up. I really don't. I'm just a hammy guy. I don't have to try and fake it till I make it. It was just completely got me off guard. And yeah, like I felt dumb, but at the same time, it also kind of made for a good payoff. I got to have I got to have an Estelle moment, and that was worth it. But I also really like how her being the princess was like not the worst part of her, but it was like the least important part of her, which is really great. The idea that like there was so much to Chloe and that we got to see so much about her before I think you could even like reasonably guess that she was the princess, because the princess didn't even come up in like topic until after you meet Chloe. So, like, you get this really solid impression of her from the orphanage and at the academy well before you learn that she's actually pivotal to the royal family. And that's just such a cool way to have a character like her be, because then you get to know her as an individual before anything else. And she's such a fantastic character. Her role at the academy, and like it's very clear that like the academy people are kind of aware of who she is, but they don't treat her differently. She still felt like just a student, which is really, really good to see. Oh yeah, Dice, you're saying that you had her pegged as like a sister of like Julia Schwartz. I agree. Like, I didn't think she was a sister per se, but I thought they were related. I thought that they were like, because Chloe talked about how like her family died, so I thought she'd been adopted by like Lieutenant Schwartz's family. So like not literal sisters, but I thought they were kind of like Joshua and Estelle type of siblings. And like that's what I thought that was gonna go for. I thought it was gonna be a little bit of a foil for Joshua and Estelle, but like in the the Royal Academy side of things, just like kind of help us understand the world building of it, which is true in a sense. But yeah, like I definitely was like my hunches were in the wrong direction there. I also want to say, oh gosh, darn it. Seek. Yes, that's the name. I was going to say the bird. I was going to say like, in my head, he's just Scree. Because every time he's on screen, that's like, all I would do is that Scree. And I loved him. But Seek is also a fantastic like bonus for him. Yeah, thank you for all the screes in chat. Thank you so much. But like, I want to know if that'll ever get explored more, because genuinely, like the bond between Sieg and Chloe and Lieutenant Schwarz, it's really interesting to know, like, is that kind of a bond a common thing? And is he considered a monster, or is he because he looks like a bird, like a falcon that we have in our world, but like, could you find wild ones and would they attack you like other monsters would? Or are they domesticated like a chicken and like it's common to see them as pets? He's just a particularly intelligent one. Or is that the thing too? Is like, are they all intelligent like he is, or is he like a unique to his race? Like, I'm genuinely curious. I want to know more about Sieg, and like, but it makes Chloe come across like a bit of a ranger type character, like a D&D ranger, not like a Strider type ranger. But it's kind of funny too because my first book, and maybe this is part of why I had such a soft spot for Chloe. Not only is Chloe just great as a character, but Sieg is offended by the comparison to a chicken. Chickens are noble beasts. Now, I was more comparing him to like a parakeet, or well, honestly, it not being like facetious, it more of like a falconry type of pet. Like I knew somebody who had a falcon who would use it to chase away birds from airports, but so obviously that's more like the role he's supposed to be, but like there's still so much more to him than that. So yeah, anyway, I'm just curious about like how Sieg and his like how he fits in the universe, and like the role that his species plays. Like, is he unique or not? Oh yeah, I was going into the tangent of like I talked about how I like to write. It's one of my pastimes. Like, I don't think anything's gonna come of it. I don't know if I don't think I'm skilled enough. I don't know if there's enough I can offer to it. I hope to. I'm currently working on a visual novel. I'm hoping to actually bring out as a script, because I definitely can't do the rest of the visual noveling, like the programming or the art. So I'm hoping to write a script and be able to like approach somebody with the script and be like, hey, can we do something with this? But my first ever like solid writing attempt, like I've always done little things, but like the first novel I ever actually wrote, like to completion, the main character I had was a ranger who had a pet eagle. And so like, and the eagle is very smart, and it had interactions like that. Like Sieg very much reminded me of that first character I ever wrote, like Sieg and Chloe. Just like the dichotomy they had and the type of like what they could do together was very similar, and I liked that a lot. Like, so bias, absolutely, very fun. So as far as like Princess goes, and as a character, I have to give top marks to Chloe. I also think her character design is probably the best out of the playable characters. I think just her look, her style, everything is just really solid. Pretty much, when it comes to that, she's on par with Estelle as far as like style and character design goes. Those two are the champions. I just think the way that they look, the way they talk, and the whole package, top tier. So Chloe, absolutely on the top as far as characters. Very, very happy that we got to spend so much time with her as a character, both as a character to fight with in combat, but also just like narratively, how many events that she was present for and got to be a part of. And also, we can't leave the Academy without talking about the play, and how like despite Joshua, despite Estelle and Chloe being some fantastic designs, we all have to agree that the prettiest character in the game is Joshua. Princess Joshua is absolutely the crown bearer of gorgeous. It's like, it was shocking, him with long hair. It was beautiful. I loved it. It was so great. Like that whole sequence, the whole play was just great. And I thought Estelle also was very, very handsome. I still think that while Estelle with the pigtails, great, looks cute, I still think with her hair down, she is prettier. But Joshua hair down, whew. I mean, it's one of the things where it's just like, I almost wish you. No, never mind. I could fall for Josh. Anyway, yeah, you know, it's memeing on Josh, but it's almost not a meme. He's like genuinely great looking as a princess and as a maid. Like he's shockingly good at pulling that look off. It's really good. Anyway, so moving on. I'm gonna get in trouble. Ruan. Everyone calls you Joshua. Yes. Ruan is a city. So we're gonna go to like Ruan itself was really fascinating. The bridge was a bit gimmicky. It kind of almost felt like it was all like it made sense in the lore, but it also felt like it was almost entirely for like a boat chase scene. But yeah, it's Ruan was really, really enjoyable as a city. I liked how like being on the shore was very pretty. I still think Ruan like and its surrounding area is like the area I think is the most like enjoyable like scenic wise. And if I were to pick a place in Liberl I'd want to live, it would probably be Ruan. Because like the location and like the beachside stuff and the cliffs and everything, like just gorgeous. So it was probably my favorite city to run around in when it came to just aesthetics. I do think that the sub like rampways that went like next to the water and under the bridges and stuff was a little confusing. Oh yeah, it even reminds me like there was that whole side mission where like I only found it by pure accident with like it was like the lure or the fishing thing or something. I can't remember what it was. I just remember like finding it was absolutely a fluke. I just happened to click when I was in the right spot. I really didn't mean to, and it just happened to find it. And that was another scene where I was like, are people gonna believe that I was genuinely like an accident, because it felt so contrived, but it was absolutely a mess up. So yeah. And then Ruan itself as the plot was really interesting. I liked the twist of the mayor, who did a great job introducing himself as a very kind, loving, and like soft-spoken individual. Just have him turn out to be such a jerk and such an absolute capitalistic pig. Like, I have nothing against capitalism. Like, it's fine. It's got its flaws, but it's fine. But my gosh, he highlighted all the flaws of capitalism. It was beautiful how mustache twirling he ended up being. I tell you, ironically, he was probably like the most evil character in the entire game, besides like you know, besides Alba. Alba obviously being pretty freaking evil. But like besides that, like the mayor was freaking nutso, and I did like how he didn't just kind of take things lying down. We confronted him and he like tried to dodge it, but when he like felt outplayed, he had a backup plan. I thought that was really cool because it made sense for the character. And I also did like how I was sad that we didn't get to beat him up with Estelle's staff like in the end, but him getting caught out by the Royal Guard in an airship was pretty cool. So I'm very excited about that. I wonder if we're going to learn more about like, because it was pretty clear he was being manipulated as well. And so I wonder if they're going to figure out like how manipulated he was. Like, was the manipulation what led him to burning down the orphanage? Or was that just his personal like greed and evilness coming through? And he just also happened to be puppeted to kind of bring about the coup, essentially. Like how involved was he in that whole process, and how aware was he, and what actions were influenced and what actions were just him being a terrible individual. But as a character, as a villain, fantastic, really cool job there. I also thought the orphanage, my gosh, that orphanage, the orphans got such a bad hand in this game. I think it was good at really making things relatable and like just painting like just how dire and dark things were going on, but like it kind of got to the point where it just became utter just ridiculousness of just how poor, like what a crappy hand they were being dealt. Like, so they're struggling to have the people necessary to support the orphans. Remember, they're war orphans too. They're not just like regular orphans. Most of them are war orphans. Then the building is burned down. And then they go and so they're staying in like for free in a hotel, being and that guilt that was being felt about the burden they were. And then like the attempted kidnapping, and also the plan to like send them to Grancel and then just not give them a place to stay and just hope that they get taken in there. It's just like it was all crazy. The whole stuff was just nuts, and like it really did a good job of like kind of putting things in perspective and really putting the pedal to the metal. Okay, so some of you saying like Dice and Thieves, you're talking about how like the idea was that it was more about being nudged in the right direction. So like he was probably manipulated, but it was like he had his already preconceived notions and his desires were there. They just might have been pushed more to the surface, and that would make sense. I can see why you say that. But yeah, like the orphans have such a bad hand already, and to just really stick it to them, just like give them really crappy stuff happening in the Ruan area. Like it sucks because it's like it's so depressing to think about how hard like it is for like orphans and the foster care system. Like they already have such a rough hand, and then to see that the reality is that they also are taken advantage of, because that's in real life. Like embezzled funds, like it's always a problem. But I can't tell you, having done some volunteer work and with the foster care system, embezzlement is essentially the most common, it's the one like of any like industry. Like the foster care system is the one that experiences embezzlement the most, and like to such a degree where it's almost difficult to track down. Like from like the basic standpoint, where like there are some people who get into fostering not to help kids, but just to pull like this like almost like it's almost like a passive income from the government. So they just do the bare minimum just so they can get some extra money, and it's like it's so scummy, and yet like it's still better than the alternative, which is just so heart-wrenchingly depressing. And then there's also the times where like it's like malicious, where kids get abused or they get mistreated, underfed, undersupported, and then at the same time the programs themselves are just being gutted. So like kids are in shelters, aren't getting adequate food and clothing, and like but like the person who's running the shelter is like running around and taking like vacations on the money that's supposed to be going towards the orphans, and like the it's just awful. It happens so often. And so like even like this game, it like kind of captures like a bit too well the actual realities and horrific like things that are happening, and like it happened today in like in our world. And that's in like I'm in America, you know, like we're in one of the safest, best, well-off countries in the world, and it's that bad? Can you imagine how it must be in other places? Marchy March, you're saying congratulations, finish the game. You have to save, talk to Alba in the museum before. Yeah, I did do that, and I did in my own personal time. I also did the little Oliver mission. I forgot to talk about that in Grancel. I did the Oliver mission just to get it completed. So yeah, that'll be good. But yeah, no, so to kind of wrap capstone things about the orphans and stuff, like just to call out, if you ever have an opportunity, I highly recommend, if you're going to do some community service, which is always a good idea, try and look for shelters, for family shelters, children's shelters, refugee homes. They always need extra hands, and even if they're one of the crappier like locations, that almost is all the more reason to like try and make time for them. They could really use it. It's been harder, just with like how busy life has been and with the medical stuff I faced this past year, to do volunteering. I was definitely a lot more prolific about volunteering in college. That was when I did the most of it. Some in high school, but definitely college is when I really was trying hard to like get out there and help. And so like if you've never taken the time, highly recommend you do it. Highly recommend. It can only make you a better person, and like it means a lot to those kids. I think I like the hopes. I like the hopes I did something right there. But yeah. Anyway, enough about that heavy topic. Oh yeah, the lighthouse. Can't go on too far without saying that like the lighthouse being, because that was part of Ruan, right? Yeah, that was Ruan. So the Lighthouse quest, where we got introduced to the black masks guys, really cool. But like I said, like the fact that I didn't have to be told, I wasn't even like implied by you guys, like you didn't tell me to go to the lighthouse. I just saw it. I was like, huh, let's go visit the lighthouse, and boom, walked right into a mission. And then when later events happened, like when the lighthouse like suddenly shut down, I was like, oh no, you don't. That old man's not going down without a fight. And like we went in there and helped him out and everything. And so it's just so cool to be able to see just how it's again such a good example of like the content. There's so much content that's there, but it's only there if you're curious. It's only there if you are looking and searching and like wanting to know more and like hungering for more character development, more plot, more intrigue. Like it's so cool to let it so much be in the hands of the players, which is something I think gaming is having to relearn. If you look at gaming, like even a few years ago, it's always hand-holding, it's always like quest markers, you know, and even highlighting paths. Like a great example of this, I think, is like Assassin's Creed. Like the first Assassin's Creed, yeah, you'd have like a marker leading you to a target, and then you just kind of had to figure things out. There might be a creative way that they have built in for you to solve a problem, but you didn't have to do it that way, and you might not even know what that way was if you didn't look for it. And then like, you look at modern Assassin's Creed games, and it's like it's like they autopilot half the stuff. It's like they make everything you learn is a cutscene that you have to like walk through slowly, and like everything has markers and like it's just like the handholding is real. And also like a good example of this is like I'm starting Starfield this week, which is gonna be really fun, especially for first episodes, because there's so much like I have to prepare. I usually record it pretty early in advance, so I actually just wrapped the recording of it, and it's already feeling really handholdy. So like I love a game that encourages you to just pay attention, and by paying attention you find stuff, you do stuff, you get gear and everything. Our ultimate hero assassin, hello, good to see you. Quick gameplay or 100% okay, so this is a live stream of a wrap up for the game. So like I finished the game, I did a YouTube video series. This is kind of like my capstone of it, where I'm talking about like the stuff that left an impression, the characters I loved, like what I liked about each aspect of the game. So this is just a summary. It's not me. This is like the footage you're seeing is me playing. But if you want to watch me play the game, to like look in the playlists, I just finished this game. So this, like I said, this is just me kind of gushing and fanboying about it right now. So thanks for dropping in. I hope you're not disappointed. But it was a full playthrough. It was not like a perfect playthrough. It was a blind playthrough, and I got as much of the game as I could, but it didn't get everything. So, yeah, if you're looking for a completionist, not really so much me. But yeah, no, I played it. I played it all the way through, and I had a lot of fun with it. So thanks for dropping in, Arch Ultimate Hero Assassin. If you want to stick around, you can hear like me kind of wrapping up my thoughts about characters. So anyway, that really is ultimately like my thoughts on the Lighthouse, though. And I also got to say, though, this is also where we got to talk about Agate as a character. So I mentioned before, like, it's sad to say it because like he is my least favorite character, like the playable characters. But at the same time, that's not bad. like he's on the bottom of a really, really elite pile, and I wouldn't even say I don't think he's a bad character. I think he's a good character, and I loved, like, we got to see a lot more about him in Zeiss, but we were introduced to him in Ruan, and so we got to have his fiery passion. I liked how he was a foil to Estelle, which is really cool to see, and really I like how they just hated each other at the same time. Like they're really just like butted heads immediately, but it falls in line with their personality. I was interested to see how a lot of bracers talk about how important it is to like fight together, to work together as teams, and to like make sure you don't get in over your head. But he was always determined to fight on his own. A lot of that seemed to be inspiration, again, from Cassius. This idea that he wanted to be like Cassius and be able to handle things like Cassius. But I'd argue Cassius didn't operate on his own. Like Cassius even says that multiple times. He's like to Colonel Richard. He said like, look, like you put me up on a stage, and yeah, like I've got skill, but like I never did anything by myself. Like I had to do things with other people. Like it took a nation to be able to fight off the Empire. It takes the Bracers Guild to solve Bracer problems. So yeah, like it was interesting to see how Agate like wants to do things on his own. And then Dies, you're saying that like he's afraid of getting close to people. That at least seems like I definitely see that being partially true. It looks like he lost somebody, like his sister, I think. Hopefully we get to see more about it. But yeah, I think we're gonna see. I hope we get to see more because like I feel like there's more to him that'll probably make him a lot more enjoyable as a character. But in this game, he spent most of his time kind of being obnoxious, and so that's probably why. Thieves, you said it really well. In a sea of S tiers, an A tier feels disappointing. Exactly. Like he's definitely an A tier character, but he's surrounded by so many good ones. It's like it's hard to like, it's hard to compare him. Like Agate, if you took him out of this game and put him in almost any other game, he'd be flipping amazing. He'd be such a great character, and he's a good character. But like in this game, he's just overshadowed. Unfortunately, just like Cassius, he's just kind of in the perpetual shadow there. But that's okay. So yeah, and you're saying, Harangi, you say he comes up and becomes important in SC. That's cool. Good. I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, Agate, really good, fun character. Looking forward to seeing more of him, just because of the promise of what he gets to be in the next game. So excited to hear that. Now we're going to backtracking again to Bose. Now, Bose is a very simple city, but again, like I talked about how the game ramps. Like it starts small and it builds up. Bose is a great introduction to like the difference between like a small town and a city. It introduces the like shopping center, which becomes important later because it helps you recognize that in Grancel. Sorry, I had to get a drink. My throat's drying out. So it's a really good idea. Bose, other than that, it's fairly basic. Nothing really super spectacular about it that stands out, except for one thing, and that's Mayor Maybelle. Mayor Maybelle is fantastic. I love her as a character and her character design. I wish she were a character we could get to know more. My guess is that if she were a playable character that could be a companion whom we got to see like development with, got to see like motivations with more in depth, in a more in-depth manner, she might have become my favorite character of the entire game. She left such a good impression on me. I just thought like her character design she's beautiful. I like her motivation. I like how she like is such a responsible leader, and yet she's also so human, where she like has to retreat because she can't stand like she's a perfect example of a social introvert, where she can handle herself in front of crowds. She even like talks about how she enjoys giving speeches. She likes like talking to people and like being amongst like the people of the city and being involved. But then she also like has to go retreat and like sit down and like drink her tea and read a book to kind of like unwind. It's so relatable. I love it. Lila also being best maid, very good. But like Maybelle is just awesome. I do think she, like I said, she easily could have been my #1 character, favorite character. And I bet you if we actually got to explore her like background, I think we absolutely, I probably would have 100% fallen for her as a character. I think she would have taken the top spot. So very, very fun. Maybelle left a great impression. It was very cool seeing her in Grancel. But ultimately, like, it was really fun working with her and trying to coordinate against the Sky Bandits with her, and her ability to kind of like pull the strings in just a way to not cause incidents, despite the fact that there was so much like tension between the army and the bracers at the time. She was able to kind of manipulate that just so nobody got upset. Not super upset, at least. I also liked the Sky Bandit arc in general. That was really cool. Just being able to see, General Morgan, like he was grumpy old Morgan, but like he became pretty important. But like the Sky Bandits and like the whole intrigue of like how does a ship that flies go missing? It's like, well, there's a lot of places to go, and then like being able to find their base and kind of confront them in the base and fight them down. And of course, Colonel Richard also making his appearance there. That was his first time we got to see him, and I remember being impressed with him and that begged, oh, how young and naive I was. Because they're like, but like it was a good way to introduce like the wider world. And I also thought it was interesting that they, with General Morgan introducing this idea of how bracers and the military kind of feel like they step on each other's toes a bit. Well, mostly the bracers step on the military's toes, making the military feel like they're being invalidated, when that's not at all what the bracers are trying to do. They're just trying to be like quick response and like more like down to earth type of responders rather than like the militarized version. But it was kind of cool to see how fun how that was played off, and how that like they became kind of an antagonist for us, but then in the end we also kind of saw like, okay, you know, we are on the right side, like the same side. We just have to be like, we have to work together. And yeah, Dice, you're exactly right. Like Morgan's a great antagonist who isn't a villain, because he was definitely like getting in our way, but like we're also on the same side. Like we knew we were on the same side. We just had different methods, and like he just didn't agree with the methods that bracers typically went through. And yeah, even he was standing in the shadow of Cassius. Like even he felt like he was inferior to Cassius, despite the fact that Cassius was his inferior, like his like underling. Like General Morgan was the one in charge, and Cassius was his advisor, and yet he feels that it was Cassius who was actually important in that final decision. And so, again, that dynamic is so cool. So well done. And then, of course, our boy, the best bard, good old Oliver. Oliver had I think, he's so funny, because from the first time we met him to the first time we said goodbye to him when he left with Shara on the ship, I was really annoyed with him. I was like, thank goodness he's gone. He was so frustrating for me. But then by the time he came back, I was so happy to see him. And then by the end, he was one of my favorite characters. Like, Oliver's so great. I can't believe that they were able to make him so obnoxious and yet so good at the same time. And he was also fantastic in combat, let's be honest. Like, being able to have like a solid attack at range is so nice. And so, absolutely great. Oliver was probably, if there's a favorite male character, it probably is Oliver, honestly. Just because he's a great example of like how to play a bard. Like, sure, he's very flirty, but like it's not like the memes of the horny bard. Like, there's so much more to a bard, and I feel like Oliver encapsulated it, where he like kind of has that like horny barb. Like I want to like seduce all the girls character, but like it was a small part of what made him a bard. I loved how he was so clever. He was so good at like manipulating people and information, and like being able to just be so obnoxious, but in like such an endearing way. He's really good. And I also loved the whole debacle with the wine, where like he plays at the restaurant to get a free meal, which is absolutely what a bard does. You know, the idea of like, oh, like I'll provide entertainment for your guests and help bring in more customers. All I ask in return is a place to sleep and some food. But then he goes and takes the wine that was like worth more than the business and drinks it all in one day. And it just absolutely ruins his entire reputation at the whole city. Like, that was so good. I think, didn't he have to get pardoned? Like, Maybelle, didn't she have to like step in and like officially pardon him from being like imprisoned for life because of that? That was such a cool like sub arc of story. And later, Oliver became so good. Now, you mentioned before that like Shara thinks that he's a spy. She's probably not wrong. I don't know what he is. I kind of got the impression that he might potentially be royalty of the Empire. Like the way his attendant like talked to him. I almost wondered like if he was essentially like, you could remember back in when the Colonel Richard was like performing the coup, he was trying to expedite getting Chloe engaged to a foreign diplomat, and talked about how he was focusing on the Empire. My thought, which I don't feel like never really came up, was that, oh, I think Oliver is like the prince or a prince of the Empire, and that he was going to be the one that was going to be like set up with Chloe, which I don't know if I think that that's a good match or a bad match. Like, Chloe's great and she deserves the best, and Oliver's good. I don't know if he'd be the best husband. Maybe if he calmed down a bit, but like, I don't know. It's a really interesting question to wonder if that was like what was in the works essentially. If Chloe and Oliver were going to be like, if Colonel Rush had his way, if they would have been like engaged. Yeah, I don't think they would have been a good match, but like at the same time, it's almost like you don't want to see a train get derailed, but you also kind of want to see it. like it sounds terrible, but like you kind of are curious, right? Like you almost want to see what would happen. Like a train wreck is a train wreck. It sounds exciting, even though it's obviously terrible. But at the same time, for the people, it's awful. So for Chloe and Oliver, I think it'd be a terrible match. But like at the same time, like you almost wonder, like what could they do if they were actually on a team like that? Like if they were wed and they were like working together, like what could they accomplish? It'd be really interesting to find out. I don't want to, but curiosity, all that stuff. Anyway, so yeah. That was where I thought that plotline was actually going to go. Didn't end up going that way. Probably for the better. But that's where I thought it was going. And so with him not being, if he's not a prince, then Oliver effectively is a spy. I mean, a bard like him, like his role, like the way he does things, the way he talks to people, it's a great way to like be like an out in the open spy, where like he doesn't hide he's from the Empire. But then he also puts himself in positions where he can learn really interesting information. I mean, look, he ended up in like the secret underground tower at the same time like the royal guard was down there. So like in a way, he technically would make a fantastic spy. So I'm curious to see if we get to learn more about him in the future. Also, if the Empire does make a move on Liberl again, which is kind of like what I'm considering, what I've been thinking might be like a possibility of like what they're building toward. And if that happens, like, where does that put Oliver? Like, what would he do? Obviously, he's from the Empire, but like, he doesn't seem like he would want to like fight against people he started to care about, you know? So like, where would that put him? It'd be really interesting to see that. So I'm curious. I hope not. I really don't want war, but like, it feels like war is gonna be a thing. So yeah, Oliver, wonderful character. And now we're starting to wind down, and my throat's giving out. But now we're winding down. We're down to Roland. So Roland and Scherazard. So let's go ahead and start with Scherazard, since we kind of like talked about how she and Oliver kind of like had a bonding moment on the way back to Roland on the airship. And Scherazard's really interesting because she's like clearly like a caretaker. She's clearly like a big sister / aunt type role for Joshua and Estelle. But then at the same time, she's also like kind of provocative, and she's very like come hither type of attitude, and she's also a horrific drunk, which are things that you don't usually associate with someone who's like a pseudo like mother type of role. And I think that's a good thing. I think it gives Cher a lot of depth, which is really important. Again though, she has the very like dominatrix type feel to her, which is like, I think a little too tropey. Like she's got the exotic temperament. She dresses in kind of like skimpy clothing, and she has a whip as her main weapon. It's like too many tropes stacking up there a little for my taste. I don't have a problem with any of them, but I feel like they kind of put it all in one character, which I think could have been spread out a bit more. But then again, Scherazard is Scherazard. Cher is great, and like I think if she were changed, I wouldn't like it. I think she's a good character. Like I said, just a bit tropey, but it was really fun to see her kind of putting on all those different hats. Again, for a character that's introduced to us like right from the beginning, it really showcased just how complicated characters were going to be. But for her, she didn't have to be subtle, because she didn't have to have like some kind of secret back plot. She didn't have to have some kind of like great reveal to have be worked out over the course of a story. She just had to be Shara. And so she was able to do that, again, show not tell, of like just how many layers there were going to be to the characters that we would meet. Because she, by introducing the concept of just like how complicated each character was going to be, it sets the stage of expectations of like being willing to look underneath the surface and to try and like understand more than just what we see. But and it allows for the intrigue to be built into everyone else's backstories, which is really cool. So while Schera might not be the most impactful of the characters, I feel like as from the perspective of the writer who's trying to set the stage, Schera might actually be one of the most important characters because she sets up that expectation so well. And she also just is a fun and like distinct character, which like I said, I feel like she was plenty distinct without needing to have the whip. But like the ideas and the way that she plays out is really cool. I want to know more about like where, because she talks about how she's like, I can't remember, she said she's like native to Liberl and her family is like her parents immigrated, or she also immigrated. But I want to know more about some of these other nations because I don't remember her talking much about like the nation that her family came from. I know that her family came from somewhere else. I just don't know where off the top of my head, which is because she just didn't focus on it. So maybe she didn't know, or maybe like I'm making it up, and like I don't think so. I'm really confident that they talked about how like her family came from another nation of some kind. But yeah, no, I just think that she's really cool, and she has a role to play in the story, and she plays it great. And like I said, while she might have a little tropiness going, I wouldn't change her for anything. I think she's really good as she is. And I also like I thought the drinking contest and the drinking thing was a terrible habit to have. It gave some pretty funny moments and some very fun lines to read. So yeah, and Hanrangi, you say the relationship between Schera and Estelle is what sells you on her. I agree. Again, it's not like sister. It's more like niece and aunt kind of feel to me, which I think is really appropriate. Like she wasn't trying to be your mom, but she also wasn't trying to be a sister. She was trying to be something in between, and I think that was really good, and it's what Estelle definitely needed as a character. And then Roland as a city itself is such a good introduction to the world. It has like a little bit of everything you need, but it's also like kept really simple and straightforward. The most complicated part of it was the sewers, which, yeah, it's interesting. Like Roland's interesting for being such a small town to have such a well-developed sewer, but, whatever. It's important for the plot and like developing like fighting skills and tutorializing, so I'm not gonna be too critical of it. Ooh, excuse me. I also did like all like the little quests that we started out with there, like how small. Like when we started off as bracers, like we did little things like finding a shiny stone and go and kill a couple monsters, or like go and like talk to somebody, or like find a mushroom in the forest. Like to see the scale up of stories and quests, the way they started in Roland being so small, and how they grew into such titanic proportions as like stop the kingdom from imploding. You know, like it was good scale up there, and Roland was a great place. And I like the mayor of Roland. I'm pretty sure I never was consistent with his voice. I apologize for that. I could never remember what it was supposed to be, just besides old man. So it was rough. Again, I also apologize for most of my voice work. I'm not a professional. If it wasn't clear, watching a series like this would make it very clear. But yeah, like I still have fun doing voices, so I don't mind it. I just hope you guys aren't like breaking your eardrums or anything about it. But still very, very powerful for Roland. And now you talk about the music being sad. Like this is like part of the soundtrack that's really sad. It's like, yeah. I think Roland had a lot of clues about Cassius scattered in the NPC dialogue. That's very true. Aw, I'm glad you guys enjoyed the voice work. Thank you. I'm glad. I'm glad it adds something to the game. So thank you. I've always listened, like, tangent here. I've loved audiobooks. Ever since I was even, like, young, I would go and get audiobooks on cassettes and CDs from the library, which is funny. Like, The only time cassettes ever became a thing in my life was because like libraries had them. So like I would get cassette players just for like reading books from the library in audiobook form. I've always loved audiobooks, and I've always loved how good audiobook readers can do male and female voices in ways that like they don't have to be perfect, but they're good enough to sell the story. And so I've always dreamt of being able to do something remotely that good. So the fact that you guys are even telling me that you like it, even if you're just being nice, like it means a lot to me. So thank you. Because I'm not gonna stop. I like it. So anyway, now we've got to Roland. That means we're at the capstone, and that means before we do the final ending, we have to talk about the last two characters. And part of the reason why I wanted to do this entire summary to the end, like this, because we're gonna end on Joshua and Estelle. What do I even say? They're so good for characters that we focus on for the entire game. I never got tired of them once. Not even remotely tired of them. In fact, I don't know if you recall this, but in Grancel, when they split up, it genuinely made me kind of upset. I was like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm so used to them being the team. Like, they're my core. They were my backbone. And so like to have that like tiny little moment where they were split up, for story, it made sense. But oh my gosh, like they're such a good pair. And it's funny because like I'm not the biggest fan of the tropes of like brother and sister romances. Obviously super weird if it's incest for the wincest, whether it's actual incest, obviously. No bueno. But I still think it's a little weird when it's like the stepbro, stepsis stuff. Skirting the edge. It's getting a little weird. Yet for Joshua and Estelle, I don't mind in the slightest. Because it feels so natural. And it's the setup and the delivery of it makes it step away from that creepy vibe and really step into the, all right, it makes sense and I have to cheer for it because it just feels so good. I love all the Estelle stands here. I agree. I totally understand why you're doing that. But we'll get to that. So, Joshua and Estelle, though, what a pair. Romantically, fantastic. As siblings, gold, like S tier. As characters, S tier. Like, they're so phenomenal as characters. So, that ending, holy crap. Like, I don't even think I was able to express just how that hit me at the time because it was just so like I was floored, but then also like the hints of it with the the reveal of Alba, the trait and like his like string pulling and everything. Like it kind of took away from the initial like shock horror, like being like flabbergasted, because like once that was revealed and I was flabbergasted there, I kind of knew where it was probably going after that. Like, I hated it. I hoped I was wrong. I wasn't wrong. But, like, yeah, like, by the time the ending actually came, like, I was torn up. Even if I saw it coming. Even though I knew kind of how it was going to play out. It was awful. It was so upsetting. And the way it happened, too. Like, oh my gosh. Like, the whole, like, they have a kiss. And he knocks her out with poison. With the kiss. Ugh. I felt genuinely sick. Even thinking about it's just depressing right now. And like I mentioned at the time, but the horror of using the little tiny sprite of the characters that we see when they talk, and having the subtle change of just seeing like the dead eyes and like the position change and the facial expression. Like, the subtle changes were just so powerful. It's so weird how, like, a game that many would see would be, like so, like, poor graphically can be so powerful with such subtle changes and things like that. You know, it's so good. And then, like, and Estelle, like, getting her little tears, like, wasn't that the first time we've really seen, like, tears on, like, one of the chibi-based characters? And yet, like, it's so small, and yet it was so easy to point out. It was just so, like, boom. Just so, like, just like, oh, there goes my soul, and there's my heart. You can have it, Estelle. Will it make you feel better? You know? It was so good. So, and then, yeah, so, like Joshua. So, first we'll focus on Joshua's twist there. So, it was really clear that Joshua had like some kind of past, very strongly past, that it was related to the war and somewhat. I generally thought he was like kind of like a child soldier, which he was, but like I thought it was child soldiers in like he was like left behind after the invaders like were driven, after the Empire was driven out, like he was left behind. I didn't think he was gonna be freaking like child assassin sent out to go and kill Cassius, literally to do something that was probably impossible. Like he was essentially he was sent out to die. Like Alba was shocked that he didn't get killed and decided to use him after that as like a sleeper agent. But like the fact that he was literally sent out on like a death mission at like 9 years old. In fact, I'm pretty sure that the reason they sent him out to do it was because they figured that Cassius would only hesitate fighting a child. And then that might give Joshua the opening he needed to actually take him down. That was like probably the whole reason that he was sent. Was like, oh look, Cassius is probably not going to try and kill a child. Yeah. Oh, interesting. So, Marchie, you say you thought Joshua was a castaway Erebonian prince. That would have been interesting too. I don't think I would have liked it as much, but it definitely was interesting. yeah, exactly right. Like, killed a few people, now go get the strongest one ever. Yeah, okay, guys, like, I agree. Like, set up to fail, I think so. I think it was, like, a long shot. It was a long shot fail. I think it was ultimately, like, kind of like to clean up, to like, leave a loose end. But if you happen to take out Cassius, cool. You know, like, that's kind of the idea. So it's like, I need to get this kid out of here. So I'll send him to kill somebody who I don't think anyone can actually take out. But what's the chances it could come back to bite me? But yeah, so anyway, Joshua, fantastic character. I also really like how much personalization we get. How he's observant, he's thoughtful, he's really good about working with people. Like obviously, this is probably all like heralds of his training, but at the same time, it was really neat to see how he could handle social situations very, very well. Which is great because Estelle could not. So it was really good that he was there to kind of like keep things moving in the right direction. And he was also like the paranoid one, which was good because he helped make sure that like they weren't caught too off guard by some of the twists. And like it's nice to know that like he was able to put pieces together and he was just genuinely an intelligent kid. I like how he likes to read. I also thought it was fun. The whole harmonica stuff, like it definitely looks like that was all tied to like his past and something he didn't remember, but it was such a part of his personality. I never really gave it much thought until the end. But I liked how he just liked making music, and like he specifically liked making music for Estelle. Like, wasn't that the story that like Estelle either gave him the harmonica or encouraged him to use it, and like it kind of was what helped him climb out of his post brain wipe fog and become like a person. And so like playing music for him is always his like go-to when he's like stressed or deep in thought. It's really it was nice to see that like something that was part of his background was worked into his personality so well. Yeah, like Joshua's competent. It makes sense for his background. And yeah, he's a great foil for Estelle. Now Estelle. Let's talk about Estelle. Lovely Estelle. Estelle is such a good character. And I was thinking about this like this week when I was kind of compiling my thoughts. I'm not 100% because like again, I didn't have access to a whole lot of games when this came out. Like I just didn't have the opportunity just because of my age and like access to, funds and just I had a family who was very not much into video games in general. So it just wasn't something I could do until I was like older, like 16 and older. So with Josh and like this game, when it came out, were female protagonists very common? Because I don't think they were. Like Samus being a female was a pretty big deal back in the day. And then most other games, like they'd have female main characters, but usually you'd play a male main character and have a female secondary main character. So my impression was when I was thinking about this, I was like, so was this kind of like a a very novel thing to have Estelle be the main character and Joshua being like the secondary main. Because yeah, so you remember there were a few, but not the norm. Yeah, I like that. I think, especially the fact that it was so unusual for the time, I really like that she was the main character and the main focal point for the story. It makes so much sense, especially with the twist they had coming up. But it's gotta go. Alright, see ya, guys. Like, we're getting close to the end anyway, so you're not missing much. But good. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a good day. So Estelle being the main character, though, I really loved. I also love how Estelle, she's confident, she's driven. She doesn't stand for no as an answer. Like, you have to kind of beat her down rather than like just tell her to stop. she has to believe it's in her best interest to stop, or else she won't. And it's good that she has Josh there, because otherwise she was probably gonna kill like the heir to the throne. When I was controlling her, at least. Like, she's so passionate. Like, she's where Joshua is like competence and cool-headed, she's the definition of passion and like hope. And she's so good for it. She becomes a beacon for it, which is, I think, why she ended up kind of being the focal point of the finale. Like, sure, she wasn't the most like experienced by far, but everyone turned to her because like you can't help but want to follow her. She's just that good of a leader. And being able to be so like an inspiration to like she reminds me of that. So Thieves, you're saying like Estelle strikes the perfect balance between being dull but sharp when it counts, and mature yet a nice person and to be a friend with. Exactly. And then Joshua describes her as bright like the sun. Exactly. All that is so on point. And it actually kind of reminds me of shoot. Oh no, I had a thought and it was really cool and now it's gone. Ah, dang it. I got distracted by your awesome comments. So Estelle, she's so good and confident and powerful and pushing forward. Oh, yeah, that's what it is. So one of the tabletop RPGs I do enjoy, like I played a lot of D&D growing up, and Pathfinder is my now go-to instead of D&D, but my next favorite tabletop RPG that's not like typical fantasy magic based is Call of Cthulhu. And Estelle would be, if I could recreate a character for Call of Cthulhu, I would recreate Estelle, because being a little dense in Call of Cthulhu is like a superpower, because like it helps you deal with like the insanity you're dealing with. And I think again, that's what makes Estelle such a good character for a leader, especially like when it came to like going into the underground and fighting like the essential eldritch horrors that were the remnants of the ancient empires. Is that she wasn't getting caught up in the like, I don't know if we can do this, like look how outgunned we are, look at how out of sync we are, we don't know enough, like all these things that would cripple someone like me, because I'd be like terrified of like, what if I mess up, what if I get this wrong? But she's like, no, we have to try, we have to go, let's just do it, like screw us understanding, we just gotta do the best we can. And she just charges headlong. So of course we're gonna follow her, because she's never gonna give up. She's never gonna quit. And that's something that's so good for a character. And like you said, a gender bent shonen protagonist? Yes. In fact, though, I don't think it needs to be gender bent. Why do all shonen protagonists have to be male? There's gotta be examples of like Estelle where there's female, and I think they should just be called shonen protagonists. It's just, they're very uncommon, I know, because shonen typically is, the pitch audience for shonen is like young boys, right? So it makes sense that there's not many, but there's gotta be some examples somewhere. But Estelle's fantastic and adorable. Character design is fantastic. She's gorgeous. Oh my gosh, she's adorable. Yeah, Estelle's pretty much like the perfect protagonist, especially because remember I talked about how the game does like show not tell. A big reason for that is because the protagonist is a little bit on the dull side. It's not that she's stupid, but she didn't pay attention in classes because she found them boring. She loves being physically active, so she's not a studious kind of person. And so when she's confused, and by like stuff that other people think of as common or as part of like a general education, it makes sense that she's confused, that she would ask questions. but it lets us as the player ask questions without it being super obvious that we're being just expounded to, you know? So again, wonderful character to have. It's such a good idea to have a character that doesn't understand everything, because it makes it easy for the world to be explained in a way that makes sense and doesn't break, like, you know, the flow of the game or the story in general. So Estelle, just fantastic. She's such a good choice for a main character. So then the question comes, because I'm a guy and the way I swing, I guess we gotta do best guy, best boys, best girl. Best boy, it's gotta be Oliver. Joshua's great, and Joshua is the prettiest. Joshua might be best girl, but I still think Oliver's best guy, best boy in general. He has so much flair to him. He's got stiff competition too. Like Zin's great, Joshua's great, but Oliver's best boy. But I know most of you here, best girl. A lot of you have been very much stands for Estelle. And honestly, if I were literally a person in this world, surrounded by these people, and Maybelle wasn't an option, I probably personally would be very drawn to Estelle, because she very much encapsulates the kind of girl I've had crushes on growing up. But if I had to pick my best girl, it has to be Chloe. Don't hate me. But Chloe's just fantastic. She's so fun, and I love just like the way that she talks and the way that she holds herself. And princessness aside, her role of just like with like Sieg and just like the way she talks, and like just all of it, everything about her character is my favorite. And it sucks because I keep playing into my own tropes, Chloe. Because, like, here's the thing, whether you know it or not, apparently I just can't break my tropes. I like warrior princesses with purple hair. It's every time it happens, I always fall for that character. And I don't mean to, but it's the same thing every time. So yeah, Estelle is such a good character, and I do not blame any of you for thinking her. In fact, Chloe and Estelle is such a tight race. On the right days, Estelle wins, but more days than not, it's Chloe. So Cher's fun too, yeah. But like again, like I keep falling into the stupid, like it's not stupid. It's an elegant taste. I don't know why I keep falling for the same blue and purple haired girls, and they always a royalty, and I don't know why. It's in everything. It's in the the characters I like. It's in the games that I like. It's terrifying. I don't know why I'm so consistent. Because, I don't know. Maybe they just make all the characters that are royalty with purple hair, and that they give them the similar personality traits. I just keep falling for it every time. But still, yeah. So yeah, if after hearing Estelle's not my favorite character, I can understand if you'd want to leave. I'd hate to see you go, but unsubscribing is your prerogative. Obviously it's fine. Like, we all have our own favorites. And like I said, Estelle's fantastic. Do not diminish Estelle at all because Chloe is my favorite, but it's just the way it is. I just think that she's really fun. And again, too, like, if I were really in this world, I could definitely see myself falling for Chloe as as a person. But I also feel like Chloe would be way out of my league, so I don't know if I'd ever even get the chance to talk to her. In that regard, Maybelle is also the same way, but for some reason, I feel like she'd be a little more approachable for me. I don't know. I'm weird. God, I'm also getting tired. I'm getting to the loopy part of my night, so I'm gonna start wrapping up here. This game was amazing in every conceivable way. I am so happy that you all put me on the track for this. Thank you so much a patron sent me the art book for the game, told me not to look at it, but told me I would love it when I got to it. Yeah, too. Chloe would be approachable, Claudia not. Very true. Also, I have to say, I know Chloe likes her short hair, and I think she looks adorable with it. but she also looks gorgeous with her long hair. Like, let's be honest. Like, she looks beautiful both ways. But like, the long hair is great. I wish I could have a fusion of like Squirrel Girl Chloe with long hair. But anyway, enough of that. Oh gosh. So thank you so much though for those of you who kind of like put this on the priority list. And you know, I liked the look of it when I saw it. And I played it. I can't believe I never played this game. I can't believe it. It's like the visual novels I found, like Muv-Luv and Steins Gate. Like, I played these games and I'm like, how did I never even hear about these games? They're so up my alley for the exact kind of games I love, with stories and characters being like the focus of the game. I don't know how I made it this far without knowing. Yet at the same time, I'm so happy I did, because I got to share the journey. Like, I get to literally share this experience with everybody, and like, I get to document it too. And just like, it's so fun, even just for me. And being able to share it with people like you who are also passionate about it and been able to stick through it with me, it's so cool. I'm so lucky, and I'm so happy that I started making videos. And I'm so happy that I found the time to do 5 videos a week so I could start adding games like this here. It's so cool. I'm really lucky I have such a cool life. And I'm really grateful that I get to be here with everybody and to share it and to enjoy the story and to be able to make it such an important part of my life. And so that's why I get to have a pretty fun announcement that you all probably saw coming, with an ending like that. Despite the fact that going into the finale, I wasn't sure if I wanted to roll straight into the next game, that ending sealed the deal for me, everyone. Next week, we're jumping right into second chapter, because we can't let that stand. Some of you expressed in the comments like how you had to wait like years for the translation of second chapter. I can't imagine the torture. We're not waiting. I'm gonna jump right into it. Next week, we're starting the game. SC is jumping. It's happening. We're going right into it. We're gonna figure out what the heck's gonna happen. We're gonna rescue Joshua from his demons, or die trying, or kill him. I'm not sure which. Something's happening, but we're gonna get him back if we can. We gotta figure out what's gonna like, and hopefully we get some answers to like some of the crazy stuff with the towers and all this stuff. I have no idea. What to expect for the game, but I'm excited for it. So yeah, next week, first episode, we're sticking to it. Now, I do want to play the rest of the games in this and the other series that are tied to it. Absolutely, all of them, Trails and Cold Steel, all of it. Like, I want to play them all. Like, I know not all of them are as loved, but like at this point, I'm kind of I'm committed. I don't like doing things halfway. Like, I can't just leave this stuff alone anymore. So eventually, I want to play them all, but also that's gonna be quite a slog. That's a lot of games. So I'm probably gonna intersperse it with other games too. Like I said, for a while at least, I do plan to dance between these games and Yakuza, because I want to catch up in Yakuza. I want to play the Like a Dragon games too. They look so good. I want to build my way up to them. So yeah, like, we're gonna play them all, but like, just keep in mind, I do plan to probably jump between this series and other series as we go. But yeah, no, we're not doing that right now. We're going straight to SC. So I hope you all are excited for that. I am excited for that. But yeah, I think that's going to be the end for tonight. Thank you so much for attending. If you attended live, I really loved being able to chat with you all and read your comments. I tried reading most of your comments, but there was a lot, so I didn't read every single one, but I read it to myself at the very least. Thank you all so much for being here. If you couldn't attend live and you're listening to this in post, thank you so much for listening to it. I hope it was interesting to you. Like, again, this is like a very solid, very unscripted breakdown. You're getting like my raw thoughts. You're hearing like my goofs. But this is just me sharing and fanboying. Thank you so much for being here for that. I hope you are ready to roll right into the second chapter. And, you know, just, it means the world to me that you're here. The patrons and the members, like each of you, for those of you who are directly supporting the dream of this channel and the hope that someday it can become greater and bigger and more independent than it is today, I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. But also, Don't feel like you have to. Don't be obligated. I'm just happy people are here. If like 5 people show up to watch a video I post, that's good enough for me. The fact that there's more of you than 5 makes my day. So thank you so much. You're all such a wonderful part of my life, and I'm so grateful to be here for it. And I'm going to close out this session by jumping into and showcasing the trailer for the next game. But that'll be kind of like the capstone for the stream. So thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your night, a good holiday if you're celebrating, and a good new year for those of you, regardless of where you are. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great night, and until the next video watching me or see me next, I'll see you there. Have a good night, guys. Ah, sorry, I'll fix it. Ah, I'm failing. Was this it?